My name is Maria Chandoha Valentino. I married an Italian man. My parents were, on my mother's side, all Italian, but on my father's side, all Ukrainian. So I grew up as a third generation, I don't know if I can say I'm an immigrant, but I didn't, because my mother was of Italian origin and my father was of Ukrainian origin, I didn't feel any particular allegiance to either side, but I married an Italian. So that is when my involvement with Italy really began. And in my professional life, I was a fashion runway photographer. So that took me to Italy, particularly Milano, at least twice a year, sometimes 3 or 4 times a year for 35 years. So I feel a very strong connection to Italy and Italian culture and the language, which is beautiful. And I'm still learning Italian, but I welcome any opportunity to go there to visit it. And that's really, in a nutshell, my background. I don't know very much about the Ukrainian side, but the Italian side, I'm not exactly certain. I think it was in the teens, the 19 teens. My grandparents were married in 1909 in Pavulo, nel Frignano, near Modena. And somewhere after that, they came to the States.
Did they ever tell you, or did anybody in your family ever tell you, why did they decide to leave at that time?
It's a very good question, but I think that it may have had to do with opportunity to do a different kind of work. I think someone in the family had gone to America and felt that there was a lot of opportunity. And it's not that they were a brother of my grandmother was a lawyer, so he was a professional person and an educated person. And somehow he went and shared the information that there were interesting things happening in that part of the world. So I think that's what happened. Maybe 20 years ago, I was able to go to the place where my grandmother's family had a villa, and so we had a photograph of my grandmother and her four siblings, along with her mother, so my great-grandmother, in a garden with a beautiful Corinthian column in front of them. And it was always very fascinating to me to imagine that place. And so I was very curious to try and go there. And unfortunately, the blood relative, it was a cousin of my mother's who finally owned this it was called La Palazzina. He had just had a stroke and lost the ability to speak. But you could tell that he wanted to share information, but he couldn't. And but I did see this place with the Corinthian column, but the trees were all different. And so it was, maybe the picture that I have was taken in 1925, and I was seeing it 70 or 80 years later. So I was very young when my grandparents died. I was I think they died in the 1960s, so I was very young, and I remember that my grandfather was a very, very good storyteller, and he was a handsome man with a nice mustache, and he had enormous hands, very big hands. But the only real memory I have, and it's from pictures and a kind of a sense, is them making in the kitchen tortelloni. And my father was a photographer, so we have this documented, and that was a nice, it's a nice memory. I think my grandmother's family, her mother's maiden name was Ronchi, and from this one photograph we have, she was very stern, a very strict woman, and in fact, my grandmother's marriage to my grandfather was not looked on very well. And my grandfather was, in fact, a carpenter who had come to do some work in their house. And my grandmother fell in love with him, and it was a bit of a scandal. So somehow I think that my grandmother's brother was going to America and maybe convinced, or there was some reason to convince my grandfather to go to America in hopes that it would break up this romance. But it did not. So he ended up coming back, marrying my grandmother, and then I think she was essentially cut off from the family. And her other two sisters never married. So my grandmother probably did a good thing for herself, because her stern mother, she apparently thought no one was good enough for her daughters. So
what traces, they could be values, ideals, attitudes, traditions, foods, building, whatever you can think of the Italian culture, if any, would you say are evident in this country?
Well, the thing that resonates most with me is the profound Italian design aesthetic that is, it's an incredible contribution to our visual life, I would say, and you know what that gives to the quality of life. Granted, in a place like New York, for example, that gets very obscured because of so much input of so many things, but I feel that is such a powerful part of what makes Italian culture so rich and precious, you know. And that also that aesthetic sense, I think people who have been lucky enough to grow up in Italy and be surrounded by the kind of beauty that is in Italy, it's inside them. So that there is a level, there's an understanding or appreciation for beauty that I think regular old Americans don't get to have, you know, so.
Do you feel a little bit Italian? And if yes, could you say how much or what?
I definitely feel a little bit Italian, and I feel that understand, and maybe through learning the language and in my work I had to interact with many Italians, and but I don't think that Italians think of me as being Italian. So that's a kind of a funny thing, that in America, people come here and everyone has come from someplace else, and you can be American, but it's different with Italy, for example. You know, it's and maybe it has to do with Italian history, that so many people, so many different people have tried to dominate Italy. So Italians were always dealing with outsiders in some manner. So there's an incredible warmth, but a reluctance. You know, whenever I go to Italy, I'm always so impressed with how people can be so warm, and especially, it's only recently that I've been going, for example, to Roma, and you know, Roma is a city that is so gorgeous, and it's inundated with foreigners. And to be a Roman person and to have constantly all these foreigners in your city, you would think that they would be very rude to them or annoyed, but they're not. They're so gracious and welcoming, but at the same time, you're still stranieri. So.
Have you ever felt that you're in some way divided into cults or cultures without belonging to neither of them? And that could refer to both your migratory backgrounds from your point of view.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And even, I would say, not even belonging to not feeling American. And I suppose that has to do with, even when I was very young, not agreeing with American policies abroad and being opposed to war, or being opposed to how America interacted with other cultures. And so I wasn't you know, wanting to display my nationality as being American. My first trips abroad in the 70s, I would sometimes pretend to be Canadian. But
understandable. I mean, it was a strong, from a social point of view, it was a strong, strongly conflictual moment of history.
yes,
Especially here.
and it seems to be repeating.
Yeah, we could say that.
We could say that. I certainly can't say that I was aware of in my parents' experience of people looking down on them because of their origins. But in my parents' generation, it seemed that assimilation was very much what people did, and they didn't, like today, if you come from another country to America, you hold on to your language, you're proud, you're much more open about showing those. And in my parents' time, both my parents were born in the early 20s, it was, you were blending in. And my father regretted it to the end of his life that he didn't learn his parents' language, and that's what they spoke at home. They spoke Ukrainian at home, but he didn't learn it. And my mother was the youngest of 6 children, so she learned Italian, but all of her siblings were all speaking English, so but she could speak Italian, so that was nice. My husband told me that she spoke with a Bolognese accent. So the area of the states that my grandparents settled in was southern New Jersey, which is a very strong agricultural area. And I think they were in a little town near Vineland, New Jersey, which was called Landisville. I went there recently, and I remember it's the same as in my youth, a little bit desolate, but very small town, but surrounded by beautiful farmland. And there was a very strong Italian community there. So I think the language was preserved. And I never had the feeling of anyone saying that my mother was taught not to speak English or not to speak Italian at all. So I think that's a good thing.
Connected to the fact that you are a woman, we want to ask you if you ever perceived the experience of a greater difficulties in the integration process, or if this was not the case for you. Did you seem to encounter such experience in the people you came in contact with, so maybe your mother or your grandmother?
Well, I think that problem goes beyond nationalities. It doesn't have anything to do with nationalities. It has to do with people's attitudes, with women's capabilities, and so I couldn't really speak specifically to that story of, being Italian and being a woman. Regretfully, I did not, when my husband was alive, my husband and I were married for 30 years, and we had a 29-year age difference. So my husband was just a little bit younger than my father. And he was from Trieste, or actually he was from Albona, which is now part of Croatia. But when he was born in 1924, it was part of Italy. And I think because of being so busy with my work and traveling, I intended to get Italian citizenship, but I didn't fill out the paperwork. And when my husband died, which was 10 years ago, I felt an incredible loss with the connection to Italy and anything Italian. And when I investigated, I thought surely I could get my Italian citizenship. And I was told that because my husband died, I couldn't. So I was very sad about that. And I still haven't pursued it further if I got the correct information or not. I don't know. Or even if I could get citizenship through my mother's side of the family.
Imagine this interview being shown to your descendants. Imagine letting them hear your voice in a time far from this one. What is that they should never forget?
That's a good question. What is it that they should never forget? I'm challenged by that question. I mean, I want to say that being here since we're talking in the United States, they should not forget to go to Italy. They should not forget to experience, the incredibly rich visual culture of Italy and the food of Italy, and the amazing geography and contrast from north to south, if they could be so lucky to travel there more than just one place. A greeting?
Yeah. Yeah.
Salve.
That's great.
But I have to say, my family had a friend who, when he would leave a party, he was an Italian-American by the name of Chaffee, and every time he would leave, he would say, as they say in Chinese, arrivederci.
You told us that you brought with you some documents, some material testimonies
Yes.
of your familiar past. So if you want to show them,
Yeah, yeah.
that would be great.
Well, one thing is that photograph that I was talking about with my grandmother, with her 2 sisters and 2 brothers, and her stern mother in the center. And my grandmother married a Cuniberti, which I think is a name that is maybe common in the Bologna area. In any event, this uncle, Emilio, had a son who in fact became quite a noted artist in Bologna, Piero Cuniberti. And this is my grandfather, who, this picture, I don't know the date of it, but it must be early 1900s. And I also have his passport, Regno d'Italia, in nome di Sua Maestà Vittorio Emanuele il Terzo, which shows his date of birth in Pavulo, 1879. So, and I think this was issued for a trip to go to America. But I don't know the date of issue. The date of issue, it looks like it was 1906, which kind of makes sense. They were married in 1909. And this is their marriage license. From Pavulo nel Frignano, which is a really tiny little village. So, and then I have I have both of them, but this is the one for my grandmother, and dated 1926, and it's her certificate of naturalization. So that's actually quite a long time. If they moved to America in, let's say, 1910 or something, that's 16 years later, but maybe that's normal, I don't know. I don't know what the process is. So, and I also have a kind of an interesting thing, I think my grandmother went back only one time, and that was in 1955, and it's her Italian line ticket on the Cristoforo Colombo ship.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's interesting, which cost one way $210 in 1955. So